Got a problem? You need a hack. Hacks are creative tips for solving problems. Need an inexpensive cookbook holder? Try a pan hanger. Need to make the perfect pancakes? Try an empty ketchup bottle. Need to straighten out a creased collar? Try a hair straightener while you still have your shirt on. Need a better relationship? Try relationship hacks.
Well, good morning, everyone here at the factory, and those of you who are joining us online. We're so glad that you tuned in so that you can learn and just be inspired today. My name is Brittany, and I am the youth and young adults pastor here. You know, there is an infamous story in my family of a time when I was about probably like 11 or 12 years old, and I probably got madder than I have ever been in my life. And my dad has actually told this story before. Pastor Todd has told this story, so you might have heard it before. But thankfully, he told it from his perspective and saved me from the embarrassment of how mad I got. So I'm going to tell you today my perspective, and try not to judge me. And remember, I was 12 years old, okay? So I was pretty young. But when I was 10, my family adopted a dog. So we had a little puppy. Her name was Abby, and I was so obsessed with her. My sisters, they also wanted a dog, and my dad, being like a little bit of a pushover, he decided that whenever we wanted to have a pet, that he would agree and that he would get us the pet that we wanted, because he was never allowed to have pets as a kid. And so we begged for a dog, and my dad was like, okay, yeah, we'll get a dog. And so we adopted Abby. Probably like 3 weeks in, my two sisters decided they don't like dogs. And my parents already knew they didn't like dogs. And so I was kind of the only one who actually liked her. But I became obsessed. I absolutely loved her. When I moved out, once I became an adult, I took her with me, and she was my dog. But when I was a kid, I had no money to take care of a dog. And so, of course, my parents, they paid for her food, they paid for her vet bills, they paid for her grooming. Or they paid for her grooming one time and then realized that it's way too expensive to groom a dog. And my dad, being a little bit cheap, and also very resourceful, he decided, I have a shaver. I could do that. Like, how hard could it be to shave a dog? And so my dad brings my cute little puppy up on the kitchen table, gets his razor out, and decides to start shaving her. He didn't quite grasp how to change the length or get it to be a good length. It was like all or nothing, right? She's either going to be super cute and fluffy or she's going to be bald. And so he went with bald. And thankfully he did the hair after a while. But while he was doing this, he maybe got a little bit overconfident, and he accidentally cut her in the armpit. And he cut her so deep that she needed to go get stitches. But remember, my dad is really cheap. My dad's not taking any dog to a vet to go get stitches. And so my dad, feeling like the confidence that he can do anything, decides that right there on the kitchen table, he is going to stitch up my dog himself. He goes, and I don't know what equipment he grabbed, some string, a needle, some scissors, and he decided that he was going to play vet. See, my dad, he's never even taken a first aid course. Yet, for some reason, he thinks that he can stitch up a dog, and that's what he did. He stitched up my dog right there. She was completely traumatized. I was completely traumatized because, I was mad because now my cute dog looked super ugly. And then on top of that, my dad caused her so much pain, and I was angry. Now, I'm not the kind of person that, I don't really yell. That's not how I express anger. But when I'm angry, I do tend to get really silent. And I got silent for 2 weeks, as I did not talk to my dad for 2 whole weeks because I was so angry at him. And this started a bit of a reputation in my life as a grudge holder. Now, I like to see it as I'm an internal processor. Sometimes it just takes time to think things through, and you don't want to talk because you might say something bad. But if it gets to 2 weeks, that's probably a little bit. You got to process things by then, right? And so, although I've maybe only had a couple grudges in my life, I got this reputation. And as any loving family does, when you bring someone home for the first time, you're introducing them to your family, and you start dating this person, and they just feel the need to air all of your dirty laundry. And so probably one of the first times that I brought Scott, my husband, home to see my parents, they felt the need to warn him, just so you know, if you ever make Brittany angry, she will not talk to you for 2 weeks. And super supportive family. Hey, they were really rooting for me. But Scott stuck around, even though he knew that. And so we're married now, and so all is good. But I had to learn in my life to not get quite so easily offended. Now, we're in a series called Relationship Hacks, where for the next 4 weeks, we're looking at all types of relationships: marriage, your family, your relationship with your kids or your parents, your coworker or your boss, your classmates or your teammates. And we're looking at these relationship hacks. Now, the definition of hack is a strategy or technique adopted in order to manage one's time and daily activities in a more efficient way. So we're looking at relationship hacks, a strategy or technique adopted for your relationship of any sort in order to make it more life-giving, more fulfilling, and more loving and joyful. Now, have you ever sat back and wondered, how did my relationship get this way? How did my marriage go from so blissful and amazing to it is awkward when we are alone together at dinner? How did that friendship go from trusting and we would hang out all the time and tell each other everything to we can't even text anymore? It just feels too weird. How did my boss seem so supportive at the beginning, but now I try to avoid her any chance that I get? How did my relationship with my mom or dad end up being so wrecked? Or how did my relationship with my kid turn into us not talking anymore? Now, it could be for a multitude of reasons that these relationships begin to break apart. But I think a big reason it could be is that we got offended by them. Not maybe one time, not maybe by some huge event, but we got offended just little by little, bit by bit, annoyance after annoyance, offense after offense. And these days, I think we can all agree that we get offended pretty easily. And let's forget social media and cultural issues and that sort of thing. We get offended really easily just in our daily lives. You know, someone gives us a weird look. Someone makes a comment about our outfit that landed the wrong way. Someone made a joke. Someone took a stance that we didn't agree with. Someone showed up late or never showed up. Someone didn't do what they said they were going to do when they said they were going to do it. Someone cut you off while talking. Someone cut you off while driving. Someone assumed something about you that wasn't true. Or someone stood on stage talking about not being offended, and we get offended. And sometimes there is good reason for it. Sometimes, words, they have the power of life and death. Actions can cut so deep to our core, and it hurts, and it speaks into our insecurities and our fears, and it affirms our broken soundtracks, as we were talking about all throughout January. But is it possible that we can get too offended? And is it possible to live a life where we are unoffendable? Is it possible to build a life that is unoffendable? And to kind of build a foundation for this before we actually get into the hacks, I want to point out that we actually have a more common enemy than any of us think. Often we think that the enemy is the person who offended us, our parent, our kid, the teacher, our coworker, our friend, our teammate. We think that they did the thing, they said the thing, they are the enemy. But we actually have a common enemy. The enemy, Satan, the devil, the one in opposition against God, he does not want us to have good relationships. Because he knows that if we have beautiful, healthy, thriving relationships, that is just going to give glory to God. And he can't have that. And so he looks at our relationships and he's like, I am going to do anything that I can do to wreck this so that they don't experience joy, so that they do not grow stronger, so they do not have support systems in their life, and so that God does not get the glory. Jesus claims it in John 10:10, that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He comes to steal the glory away from your relationships. He comes to kill the love and the joy that you could experience in your relationships. And he comes to destroy them little by little, bit by bit, offense by offense. And he does this by setting a trap. So I'm going to show you a little bit what I mean, and we're going to bring a prop out here to help me demonstrate this. But in the New Testament Greek, the word for offense is scandalon. And this is directly translated as trapstick, like a bent sapling. And so if I have perfect, thank you. So if I have a tree here, I don't know if any of you are actually like trappers or hunters, because you're going to watch me make a fool of myself here as I pretend to do this. But we have this tree, and there's ropes involved, there's these loops involved, there's other parts and components that are involved in creating this trap. But the most important component of this trap is this one little stick. This one little stick is what is going to actually set off and trigger this trap. So, if I have it here, I have these fancy little loops, and I'm going to put this stick through some of these loops, and it starts to create tension on the tree, creates tension on the branch. And then, as I'm creating this tension, it creates a trigger. And if there's an animal that comes through here, I'm going to be really careful with this because yesterday when I was doing this, I hit myself in the face. And I'll tell you, it really hurt my nose. So, if you have a cute little animal here that runs through the trap, okay? So they run through, it triggers the trap, and it swings back, it snaps back, and the animal is now stuck in it. And that's exactly what the devil does with our offenses. He plants these tiny little offenses that are basically held together by a twig. And that entire thing has the power to trap us, it has the power to ruin relationships, and it has the power to create so much tension with those that we love. Potentially, the tension that you feel in relationships is exactly like this. It's triggered by something that is so little, and it hurts so deep, and it feels so real. But remember, it's the enemy who is trying to steal, kill, and destroy your relationships. And unfortunately, these traps, they're not going anywhere. Jesus reminds us in Luke 17:1 that things to cause people to stumble, they are sure to come. He's like, just so you know, these traps are everywhere. They are going to come. The question isn't, can I live a life where there is no traps in front of me? The question is, can I live a life where I don't set off the traps? And when I do, I can easily get out of it. Can I live a life that is unoffendable? Now, I'm just addressing concerns at this point, and then we're almost there to get into the hacks. But the last concern is this. Should we even be unoffendable? What about, if my offense is a warning sign, that it's telling me that something is off? Shouldn't I listen to that? What if my offense is going to, help me to be able to point out all the wrong in the world and all the wrong in the people around me? Shouldn't I call someone out if they did wrong? It's righteous anger, we say. But is there such thing as righteous anger? Here's the reality that we don't like to face. Our offended spirit is not of God. If it's understandable that we are angry or offended or annoyed at not, that's not the issue. The anger that we feel, the offense that we feel, is not the Spirit of God. Think of the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Nothing about being offended or righteous anger in there. Think of the definition of love in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, trusts, hopes, and perseveres. There's nothing about anger. There is nothing about holding on to offenses in those verses. So how do we do this? How do we live in a world where there are going to be traps of offense all around us, but we don't get caught up in them? Well, hack number 1, in order to avoid the trap, we need to lower our expectations of others. Now, this doesn't seem fun at all. it almost doesn't seem right because we want to believe the best in people. We think if I hold them to a high standard, they're going to meet it. But that's not actually the reality. Yes, we should communicate our standards and our expectations, but when it comes to being offended, being offended, the breeding ground for offense is unmet expectations. The breeding ground for offense is unmet expectations. We have the expectation that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. We have the expectation that they would never say anything against who we believe that we are. We believe that they're never going to kick us while we're down or jab at our insecurities. And it would be amazing to live in a world where we can step forward in full confidence that nothing bad is ever going to happen to us, but that's not the reality that we live in. So as we lower our expectations of others, it allows us to have way more grace for them. Listen to these verses that support this. Colossians 3:13. It says, "Make allowances for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others." Galatians 3:23. "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." Ecclesiastes 7. "Do not take to heart all the things that people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you. Your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others." We have all done the offending. We've all required people to forgive us. We've all required people to show grace to us and maybe point out the areas that we did wrong, but believe in us that we are going to do better. But if we have this expectation that our kids are perfect, or our spouse is perfect, or our friends are perfect, we're doing them such a disservice because they can never live up to that. We all sin, we all fall short of the glory of God. So we relieve some of that pressure for them and remember that they are human and that they have faults and they have emotions and insecurities and fears and brokenness and sin. And sometimes all of those things clash with our own fears and insecurities and brokenness and sin. But it also gives us a chance to relate to them, knowing that we have the power to do the exact same thing as they did. And so as we lower our expectations of others, what it does is it actually raises our gratitude for God's grace, knowing that He forgave us, and we get to act in the same way as we can offer that to other people. So hack number 1, we lower our expectations of others. We allow them to not be perfect, and we offer them grace just like we have been given. And hack number 2, the trap is there, but how do we get close to it, but we're not going to set it off? Someone is going to say something to us, but we don't actually set it off and get trapped within it. And hack number 2 is to create no offense zones. Now, I've only been married for 7 months, so I don't feel like I can give any marital advice because I'm probably at least one of the newest married people in this room. So I can't give any marriage advice, but Scott and I did learn such a valuable lesson right before we got married that has helped us so many times to not set off the traps that the enemy wants us to set off. And this is by creating the bedroom into a no offense zone. And that means that either of us can be completely honest with the other person. We can say exactly what we're feeling. We can say exactly what we're thinking. We can say exactly what we need or want from the other person. And the other person is not going to get offended, that they are not going to take it personally. And now, for this to work, there has to be a foundation of trust. If there's no trust there, this can't work. Because when it comes to Scott and I's relationship, I know that he won't say anything intentionally trying to hurt me or crush me. I know that he is so for our marriage, that he is so for creating such a Christ-centered, intimate relationship, that everything that he does is to help spur us on to get closer to that. But sometimes he might say things that are wrong or that hurt me. And sometimes I might accidentally say things that are wrong and sometimes hurt him. But we've had these moments so many times already, just in our 7 months, where one of us can tell that the other needs to say something or wants to say something, but isn't sure how to process it. And so the other one of us will just say, "It's okay, this is a no offense zone. I'm not going to take it personally. We make that decision before the conversation even starts. And that just opens us up to actually be really honest with each other and get to share our heart and share exactly what is going on. And here's the thing, is that on the other side of that, you need curiosity. Get curious instead of offended. It allows us to start asking the questions of the other person of, hey, where is that coming from? Why are you saying that? If I feel a little bit hurt by that, what's in me that is making me feel hurt? And we ask each other questions and we talk about it in a way that we aren't we're walking close to the trap, but we're not actually setting it off, and we end up having really productive conversations. So maybe this would be helpful in your marriage, and you can take it and talk about it with your spouse. We didn't make this up. I think we learned it in premarital course or a podcast or something like that. But talk about it with your spouse. Or maybe it'd be helpful to create these zones with your friends. A friend that you really trust as like, no, I need to just be able to have someone I can process things with and not be afraid to say the wrong thing or be correct, or I just need to let it out. And you create these zones with your friends. Or maybe you create these zones with your kids so that your kids can actually say everything that they're thinking and they can have a place to talk about it and process it. And we choose in our own hearts that we are not going to take it personally and we're not going to get offended. Now, sometimes we walk close to the trap and then we set the trap off. And so hack number 3 to get out of the trap is to ease the tension. Now, being caught in the trap of offense, we've probably all experienced this to some degree, but it robs us of so much. It robs you of that family night or that date night, or it ruins that day on vacation, or it ruins the whole vacation. It ruins that friend's night, or it ruins that Christmas. And I had that one year where I allowed an offense to completely ruin a whole Christmas for me and my family. There was one year when I was younger that my sister did something that really offended me. It made me feel like, who do I trust? And I was telling her stuff in confidence, and she out of the, actually, I do truly believe this, it was out of the goodness of her heart, because I got so silent when I was upset, and no one would know why I was quiet. And so my family would try to get it out of me, but I would refuse to talk. And so she wanted my family to understand what was going on. And so I look back and I see it as a really loving thing, but I was so offended at the time. And so me and my anger, me and my not wanting to talk to anyone, I refused to go to Christmas. And I stayed home while my whole family went out to the family Christmas party, and I wallowed in my room and just felt sorry for myself, let that anger seep in, and that anger to just get deeper and deeper, and I ruined Christmas for us. But what I needed to learn was to calm that anger quicker, to not let myself get so mad about it, and to not ruin a really special holiday. Proverbs 12:16 says, "The vexation of a fool is known at once." The anger is just constantly known, but the prudent ignores an insult. They let it pass. Proverbs 19:11, "Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense." There is glory when we actually overlook these things and get to move past them. James 1:19, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteous life that God desires." It can be so hard in the moment to not get all tangled up in the ropes and get caught in this. And even as I was preparing this message, I was finding just holes in my life where I get offended so easily still. I decided that I was working through some of my points for this message, and I wanted to talk through them. And so Scott was home, and so I was like, "Scott, can I talk through my message with you?" And so I start by going through the story of my family, or my dad and my dog, and giving my dad the silent treatment for 2 weeks, and how, isn't it funny, my family always warned you of this, but it's not actually true. And Scott just stops me and he says, "But do you think it's a little bit true?" And I glare at him. And for some reason, he thinks that this is an invitation to keep going. And so he says, "Well, the other day when you were really upset, well, you didn't exactly talk to me. And now I'm really glaring at him, and he realized what he's saying, and so he tries to step back and get out of it. And so he quickly says, so I'm not saying that you hold grudges, but I'm saying that maybe you shut down a little. Snap. I was caught in that trap so fast. I got so mad. I was like, how do you not realize how much work I have put in to not become like this? I have tried so hard to never give you the silent treatment and tell you everything. And I even put it in our wedding vows that I'd always share my heart with you. How do you not see how much I am trying to not hold grudges and to not get angry and give you the silent treatment? And as I got a little offended, I eased back a bit. I said, I actually don't want to go through my message anymore because I'm about to talk about being unoffendable, and I feel very offended right now. And so he didn't get to hear my message that day. And I had to realize how to slowly ease the ropes, the tension, to get myself out of that trap where I could get super offended by just an honest remark that he made. Now, it's not always easy to be able to do this, but here's just 3 steps that we can start to slowly take to help ease the tension and get ourselves out of the trap. And the first one is just to acknowledge that you are even in a trap, that you are in a trap not just set by the person who said the thing or did the thing or whatever, but you are in a trap because the enemy wants to destroy your relationships by just these tiny little offenses. And so we realize that we have a common enemy here, and we get to work together to ease some of this tension. The second one is to actually loosen the knots. And this might be choosing to have a different attitude. This might be choosing to say to yourself, I will not get offended by this today, and just to create some of that resilience within yourself. Or this might be actually expressing it to the other person. This doesn't mean that you have to totally ignore it. You have to just move past it without talking about, why did that hurt you? What did that do in you? This is where the curious stuff really takes place. As you clarify what they said or what they did, as you ask questions of the other person, you ask questions of yourself, and you communicate with them how what they did felt to you. And slowly, this begins to ease the ropes a little bit. Just ease the tension a little bit so that together you can get out of the trap. And then the third thing is that you need to walk away from the trap. We can't just keep going back to the same offenses, getting angry about them all over again, one after the other. There is such incredible opportunity for a beautiful, intimate relationship that is beyond the trap. But we all have to realize that at one point, we got to turn around and we got to just walk away from it. If we are out of the trap, but we are still standing beside it, just staring at it all the time, that is not allowing us to feel the freedom of it. We need to turn around and we need to walk away. Now, there is, I don't want to minimize the painful relationships that some of us have experienced and the hard work that you have put in to not get trapped by the same thing over and over again, by the same person. And there is a place where boundaries are required so that you have some safety beyond the traps. So I'm not talking about those kind of relationships, but the relationships that could be beautiful and intimate and healthy if given the chance. The enemy wants nothing more than to kill, steal, and destroy them. The enemy wants nothing more than for your marriage to feel like you are constantly missing each other. The enemy wants nothing more than to divide you from your friends so that you can't spur each other on and encourage each other towards greater things. The enemy wants your family to stop talking to each other. The enemy wants your family dinners to be awkward. This enemy wants to ruin your family vacation so you can't experience that relaxing sense of joy with your family. The enemy wants you to be so exhausted by these little offenses that you do not have the strength to serve the kingdom of God. You are not untouchable. The traps are everywhere. But how are you going to avoid them? How are you going to not set them off? And if they are set off, how are you going to ease the tension and get out of them? So, can we be unoffendable? Is that even possible in our lives to experience that? I would say not on our own. That you cannot become an unoffendable person on your own. But Jesus showed us through Scripture that when we follow his word, when we depend on his strength, when we are working so hard to become more like him, that we get to go on this journey of becoming unoffendable, and our relationships can become so much stronger. The reality is, though, that a lot of us are facing relationships that feel like we're losing them or feel like they are not where we wanted them to be. And so, as we worship with this next song, if you are in a place where you have a relationship in your life that needs refreshment, that needs just the miracle power of God in them, where you need to get out of not just one, but maybe hundreds of little traps and you don't even know where to start, I think this next song would be an incredible prayer, an incredible declaration that it can happen and that God really can make everything